everybody, and welcome to week 7 and unit 2 of this class. So as you can see, if you've read over the prompt, we're doing an investigative podcast for this unit, where you will be interviewing someone. And so my main piece of advice, just right up front, is find who you're going to interview and set that up ASAP. You can interview someone in your field. I encourage you to find someone else besides a professor, but someone that's like actively and currently working in the field that you want to go into. And if you are undecided, you can pick a field that you think you might want to go into, right? Because then this could be a good learning opportunity for you to kind of talk to people and say, well, maybe I want to do this, maybe I want to do that. So like, what is the kind of things that you do in your job, right? And your interview, of course, will be focused more on the writing of their job. But again, writing and communication in this class, we're talking about very broadly. So I want you to talk about whatever sort of multimodal projects that they work on. Do they create anything? And you might have to then explain to your interviewee, right? What is multimodality? What are modes? How do they work together? You could talk about the different genres that they do. You could talk about the way that they communicate with people in their job, right? So communicating and writing kind of more broadly, and that'll kind of be the focus of the interview. Not so much about the other things about their job, but specifically what about the writing, and the writing in a broad term do they do in their job? What kinds of texts do they produce? What kinds of tools do they use? Do they use any sort of like special programs, or do they mostly do it on computers? Do they do it on private servers? Like, what are some of the different like communication tools that they're using, right? So that'll kind of be the focus of that interview, right? And again, you're going to do your uptake submission notes. If you'll notice, the one thing that is different about this time is you don't have to write it. So if you want to make it a multimodal project, whether you want to do an audio file, like a podcast sort of a thing, another podcast of your uptake submission notes, you can do that. If you want to do a video, like a vlog or something like this, to talk to me and to tell me your uptake submission notes, you can do that. If you know anyone in the class, you can do an interview, or if you want to get together with someone in the class and you can do like a Zoom interview, just record that of you guys just talking about your projects or asking each other questions, about what you learned in this particular unit, right? So there's different ways to do the uptake submission notes this time. As far as, making sure that you're doing everything, with the CBAP that you guys had created, and also with my feedback, which my feedback will be given to you soon, right? So everyone mostly turned in their stuff on Thursday. I had some people take me up on the extension offer, so thank you, or for that, and so for reaching out to me and talking to me. That's keeping me in the loop. Always appreciated. So those people, turned in their stuff on Sunday, and so it'll be a little bit before I get everyone's things back to them, but I will of course give them back to you with lots of feedback. So kind of going over the weekly schedule, Tuesday is you're doing a TLDR of this unit, right? So again, talking about the specifics about what you're doing this unit. If somebody came up to you and asked you like, hey, what do we have to turn in? Like, what are the main like objectives and goals, and why are we doing this? And kind of explain that in a short, in a short paragraph. Okay. Before I move on to the next day, we'll do our little bonus question here kind of early on. So I was trying to think of what I wanted to ask this week, and I feel like we're getting towards, mid-semester. We're getting towards maybe some, harder tests or some bigger projects. I mean, you just turned in your first major project in this class. So I was thinking about like comfort movies. Like, what are some of your comfort movies that make you feel good, that you're like, okay, this is what I'm gonna watch when I need to like relax, or I need to like feel nostalgia or something like that. Like I kind of talked about last week, I love Disney, so any Disney movie for me is like a good comfort movie. But I picked out some of my favorite comedies to share with you today. So my favorite comedy possibly of all time is Forgetting Sarah Marshall. I think this is so funny. This came out, a long time ago, 2008. So it's a little bit of an older movie at this point. But again, I just think this is so funny. So that's like, and then in a similar vein, because I really like Jason Segel and Paul Rudd, who are in both of these movies, is I Love You Man, which, for, again, nostalgia purposes, when Blockbuster was going out of business, I bought a bunch of their DVDs. So there's that. Other of my favorite comedy movies that are a little bit difference. Those are like more like, you know, silly, goofy. If you've ever watched anything with Jason Segel or Paul Rudd, I mean, it's very similar. So something a little bit different. Or these two movies, which again are a little bit older. To Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar, which is about drag queens, and there's Patrick Swayze and Wesley Snipes and John Leguizamo all in drag, and they look fantastic. And then The Birdcage with Robin Williams and Nathan Lane, because they're great. And if you're gonna make fun of me for having DVDs, fair. But also, I love having DVDs. I like having them because you never know if something isn't streaming anywhere. I had a friend once who just all the time would make fun of me for having DVDs and buying DVDs, or like if we're at like a thrift store and I like find a good one that isn't too scratched up, like I'll buy it. And you know, she was just laughing and stuff about it. But then when she wanted to watch the 2012 Les Mis movie, which at the time was not streaming anywhere, and she was like, oh man, I really wanted to watch it, but it's not streaming anywhere. I don't want to like buy the digital download. And I was like, oh, you want to watch Les Mis, the 2012 version? I have it on DVD. And I came to her rescue with it, and then she was never allowed to make fun of me again. So that's my multimodal you know, question then for this week. What is your favorite or one of your favorite comfort movies? And I always like to know why, you know, not just what it is, but why. These are just because, I mean, I don't know, they're so funny, and that's why any comfort movie for me is a funny movie. But yeah, all right, moving on. So as you can see also in the weekly agenda for the next couple of weeks, I went in and I reworded some of the things. So instead of having it just within the description where you're supposed to upload these things, I put it at the front. So as you can see with the TLDR, I said 2 assignments. So that means that goes to the assignments tab, and that's where you're going to turn in your your unit 2 TLDR, 2 assignments. And then you can see on Thursday it says 2 forums, so you know that's where it goes. So you're going to do a analysis of a podcast. So what I want you to do is listen to like an episode or 2 of that podcast, or if you're already a listener of a podcast, you can use one that you've already are familiar with, that's fine. And analyze it for the audience. So again, when you're thinking about audience, it goes beyond just like gender, like, oh, this podcast is for men, this podcast is for women, which is already a limiting and stereotypical category, right? That doesn't really give you the full scope of who it is for. So what kind of person, how can you describe them, would this podcast be for? It could include, you know, maybe gender, but it also can include, you know, race. It can include location, right? Are these for people who live in California? Is this for people in the Midwest? Is this for people who live in Canada mostly, right? Where, like, location, you know, socioeconomic status, you know, how much do these people make who are watching or listening to this podcast? You know, what is the education of this podcast? You know, are these for college grads? Are these for, you know, people with limited education? Like, what's the like education level? So thinking about just beyond, you know, oh, this is for this kind of person, or like, you know, this podcast about sports is for sports fans. Yeah, probably, right? But going beyond that, how can you describe more the audience of this particular podcast? And kind of with that, you can think about the intended audience versus just who the audience is, you know, the unintended audience. So the intended audience might be for, you can list, you know, kind of all your different demographic kind of things. But maybe someone unexpected might be listening to it. So say it is like a podcast about golf. Now, I know nothing about golf. I'm not very interested in golf. But if I listen, so their audience is not going to be that kind of a person, but I'm going to listen to it. Does that affect it at all? Having the unintended audience member? Am I affected by the fact that they aren't speaking necessarily to me as their specific audience? Right. So you're going to do that in the forum, and that's in the Unit 2 Activities forum. Hopefully it's easy to find for everyone. And then again, you have your other category, which, to remind, the things in the other category are things that we would have done just like in class. So these are like assignments that will help you, if you're my dog in the background. These are activities that will help you with your major project, for understanding concepts, for working your way through things, right? So again, these are 2 things that'll be in the forums. One of them is just to brainstorm, right? So thinking about, like I said at the beginning of this video, thinking about who are you going to interview and what kinds of questions are you going to ask them. And then also you're going to create criteria. So what is something that is good? What is the definition of criteria, right? Maybe something you can explore. How do you apply it to the real world? So again, like if you're thinking about what makes a good restaurant, what are some things that you would consider? Does location matter to you if something is a good restaurant? Does the service matter? Does the food quality matter? Does the cleanliness matter? Does the bathroom matter? You know, does the decorations matter? Does the fact that they have live music matter? So what makes it good to you, right? Because what's good to you might not be good to somebody else. So that's kind of the point of that. So doing that activity, working your way through, looking at other people's examples and saying, oh, well, they really value, diversity of a menu, where that's something I never really even think about when I go to a restaurant. So, and again, so that makes, when you're thinking, next week or whatever about making your podcast, what makes a good podcast, you have to consider different things that maybe your audience wants from you. I think that's pretty much it for week 2. We're kind of, for week 7, unit 2. We're kind of easing our way into this unit in this first little bit here, so I don't think it's going to be too complicated yet. But of course, if you have any questions, come to my lunchtime chats, email me, talk with me. My dog wants to play so bad, so I'm probably going to go do that. But yeah, email me your extra credit, and then we'll talk soon. All right? Have a good week.